morning, good evening, and good afternoon, I guess, as well. We're coming from all corners of the world here tonight. My name's Robbie Mitchell. I work for the Internet Society. And tonight I'm moderating this session, which is related to how IXPs can assist, or the role that they play in developing awareness and leading by example in terms of developing routing security around the world. I'm joined by three guests tonight, Anand Raje from India, Peter Gitau from Kenya, and Matthias Wichtlhuber from Germany. I'm sorry if I've got some of those pronunciations wrong. I did my practice prior to, but they will introduce themselves shortly. So, as mentioned, this session will be touching on more looking at the communities that these three representatives of IXPs in those countries work with, and how they have developed a community and relationships with their peering partners. And I guess lessons learned from what they've been able to do at very country level, which would be the case in Kenya and India, to a global level with the case of Matthias and DE-CIX, which for those who aren't aware, DE-CIX would be in the top 3 IXPs in the world and one of the largest peering partners in the world. So we've got a nice little mix there where we can learn from each other, I feel. So let's get into this. For those as well, please put some questions in along the way. We're going to have a bit of an introduction. Each of the panelists will introduce their IXP communities, and then we'll get into a bit of a Q&A. We have some prepared questions, but the more questions you can pose to us, the better the discussion can be. You can put it into the comment section, or you can raise your hand and we can cue you in and you can ask your question verbally. So to begin, I'll pass you over to Raje. Raje, so you're representing Kolkata IX. Now, can you give us a bit of background on Kolkata IX and its community?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Robbie. And it's really great to be here discussing about Kolkata IX, one of the community initiatives. If I say about the background, around 2014, we have started it. It was a Eyes of Kolkata chapter initiative. We were doing some awareness in the community about what need to be done for kind of bringing root servers in the region, and working with the ISP communities. And some of the ISPs and network providers have joined us, and they told that whether we can start with a community exchange point where they will be donating everything, switch and everything. So we got involved many communities from data centers, those organizations which would provide the place, the hardware, and those who were intended to join the IX. And that's how 2014 this IX was born around with 3 peers. In 2016, Akamai joined as the first CDN in the region, and then in 2018 onwards, iPhone, the India Internet Foundation, has become the organizational home for this, because it was expanding. As a community IX, we have seen that the growth was not very steady, because you need to understand what need to be done. But it was word of mouth, it was happening. And in 2019, we have organized SENOC, one of the community events, wherein lots of ISPs, other players have come and joined us in Kolkata. And then the thing has completely changed. There are lots of peers and there are lots of communities who have started joining us. And we have moved it to 2 places, in Kolkata only. And in 2020, one of the events that we do yearly is India Internet Week, in which we introduced one of the Manners Ambassador Ram Periyar, I think. He has done a workshop in 2020. And there we have involved lots of peers who were actually joining Kolkata IX at that time. And we started understanding the benefits of routing security and working with them how to implement in our IX as well as in their networks. And after that, 2020, it took around 6 to 9 months of time to convince them, and also working in our IX fabric, implementing those filters and whatsoever the actions they were there in the manners. And we have implemented that in 2021, we become manners compliant. So the tagline of this panel is kind of, it takes a community, definitely takes a community for routing security or any kind of initiative on internet. It takes a whole lot of time, around 9 years has spent, but because it's a community initiative, the community has also benefited, and because those network engineers who are actually working with the community is one of the part of the IX who are actually managing IXs. So they understand that yes, this is something which need to be done, and they whenever they go to their organization, they also try to implement that particular part. So in that way, what happens, it is enriching for them also and for Kolkata IX also. So this is something that has been into now it is 2023, and two places around 25 plus peers are there, around 80 gig of traffic the IX is having, and steadily it is growing, and we are kind of working on a next generation IX model with SDNs in place. So the idea was not to make it big, but to make a kind of a template wherein this could be replicated in other places across India, so or different regions. So in that way, we are also working in Guwahati with other network operators, giving this example how it could be done over there, and they can also do it for themselves, and we are there to help them out in working with this. In that way, this is on community IX and growing. That's all from my end.
That's fantastic. And I mean, yeah, sorry to belittle you at the start in terms of being a country IX. I mean, you've just shown that, well, India itself it's a massive country, and it's a region if you even compare it to Europe. And what you're doing there is developing a regional IXs in that respect. So that's a really important thing, and we'll come back to that in the Q&A. I'm going to pass over to now Peter, and Peter has been involved with Kenya IXP for 20 years, since its foundation, which we were talking before would make it one of the oldest IXPs on the continent of Africa. So I'll pass to Peter to introduce his community to us all.
Thank you, Robbie. Pleasure to be with you all. My name is Peter Gitau. Myself and the team comprising the Secretariat of Technology Service Providers of Kenya manage the Kenya Internet Exchange Point. The TESPOC was initially created for the purposes of running the Internet Exchange Point, among other things, including advocacy, cybersecurity, and training. It comprises of about 15 members as part of the Secretariat, with about 4 members dedicated to the IXP operations. As mentioned, we have been in existence for 2 decades. We have experience in that regard, and we have come full circle to the point where we now have new members who do not know anything about exchange points joining us and taking us back to the initial challenges of setting up members that we experienced at the time. It's actually fun because it keeps us up and agile. It also means that we have wonderful things to do, like training and community development. Technology Service Providers of Kenya was originally called Telecommunication Service Providers of Kenya because it was initially formed by internet service providers at the time. But with the changes in the world and changes in society, the name was changed to technology to encompass more than just telecommunication providers. We currently have something like about 100 plus members that is directly peering with us, covering everything from technology, education, public sector, and a few members from outside the Kenyan geographical area, that is in our neighboring countries. We are currently doing about 140 gig of traffic. That is across multiple points, which I'm going to mention in a short while. And we are already availing 100 GB ports for connectivity to members. We do have quite a few doing that in 2 of our locations. We currently have 4 locations in Kenya. That would be Africa data centers in Nairobi. We are also doing iColor data centers in Mombasa. They also have a third location of iColo Data Center Nairobi, and PAIX, which is also in Nairobi. That's also, all those are data center operators within the country. We have 3 other upcoming locations, which we are working towards setting up. Talking about statistics, we have about 110,000 prefixes coming from a single member currently connected at the exchange point. They are spending that amount of V4 prefixes and about 60,000 VC prefixes. That would be the largest member that we currently have. Of course, we do have members sending us prefixes across the range from 1 to whatever number that they can. We do partner with several partners, that is ISOC being one of them. Thank you very much for having us on this session. They do provide equipment and training grants, as well as advice. We also partner with Afrinic, that is made a lot for training purposes and IPv6 uptake, as well as Packet Clearinghouse, which were one of the initial partners that we had back in the day. There may be others that I have not mentioned, but there are more. Thank you.
Thanks for that, Peter. Just to take us back as well, what was the impetus of actually developing the IXP back in the day?
Back in the day, the internet service providers at the time were spending quite a bit of money on transit connectivity. This was in the dark ages before we got submarine capacity in East Africa. There was none, basically, at the time. Everybody used to connect with satellite terminals, and that was ridiculously expensive. And especially in a developing market, which was growing very fast, the costs were not sustainable. So the internet service providers got together and decided that we were going to do the peering locally, got some expert help to advise them. And with a lot of teething problems, including being shut down because we were misunderstood as to what the intention was, we finally got the exchange point up and running. And we're happy to say it's been a great 2 decades of it.
It certainly sounds like it as well. I mean, to still stick to it. And as you said, you're having those new members coming through and giving you new challenges. That's really encouraging. And it's always nice to have that fresh air about it. So that's something we'll talk about a little bit soon, I think, as well. Thank you for sharing that, Peter.
Thank you.
For those
Robbie, you're on mute.
Sorry, Anand. I'm trying to look at 3 different places at the same time. For those who've just joined us as well, drop us a question at any time. We're just introducing our panelists here, and we're getting to a Q&A session as well. So any questions you have along the way, do drop them in. So over to Matthias in Germany, who's representing DE-CIX, and those who are familiar with the IXP landscape would be quite aware of DE-CIX. He'll no doubt drop a few figures in terms of how many points of presence and IXPs that they're currently looking after at the moment. Matthias, over to you. Share about your community.
Yeah, hi everyone. So yeah, I'm a member of DE-CIX. We are, as you may be aware, the operator of one of the largest IXPs worldwide in Frankfurt. So this is our flagship internet exchange point. It was founded in 1995. So it's growing for quite some time. We have our 30th anniversary in 2025. So you see, this is actually quite a very old part of the German internet infrastructure already, even though it is, of course, constantly evolving and adapting to modern hardware and modern software. So during peak time, we are shifting around 40.4 terabits of traffic currently in Frankfurt from roughly 1,000 member ASs. So we are present in Frankfurt in about 40 data centers. You can see from the number that our community is very diverse. So we have a lot of small companies, medium businesses, enterprise, and all the big tech players and CDNs, of course, as well. Like I don't know, Netflix, Google, Akamai, all these guys are also present in Frankfurt and are appearing at our platform. So over the last years, we have also started exporting our peering platform and technology to other countries, first within Europe, then to the US, the Middle East, India, and Southeast Asia. So I think currently we're running around 40 internet exchange points around the globe in various stages of development. Also, there's a number of IXPs you may know that are run by DE-CIX, but that do not show the DE-CIX logo on the front. So we call this DE-CIX as a service. So you can also rent this as a white label IXP. Some of our exchanges are interconnected among each other. So we're also increasingly developing something like a global backbone network. For instance, you can peer in Frankfurt from New York and the other way around. And from the IXPs that you're running outside Germany, in the meantime, 3 of them, I think, have also more than 1 terabit of traffic outside Germany. So we're also growing outside our current home market. On a global scale, we're interconnecting more than 2,000 networks. And meanwhile, also our product range has grown a bit beyond the classic peering products. So we're also offering cloud-centric products, like, for instance, direct access to Azure via our Microsoft Access peering service, or also products that are completely independent of peering, like, for instance, our latest edition, the cloud router that allows customers, even without a port, to interconnect multi-cloud setups from different cloud providers across our platform. And yeah, as you can see from the size, there's also a need that we are handling our community relations professionally. So we are engaged, of course, in various peering-related communities. That is, of course, our own member base, which we are meeting regularly on roundtables, and we have a couple of different channels. For instance, newsletters. We're providing the DE-CIX Academy, which is educating people, for instance, on BGP topics and how to set up peering properly. We're active in RIPE, EuroIX, IETF, and of course also manners. All our IXPs are manners compliant up to at least, I think, Action 4, most up to Action 5. I'm actually not entirely sure when we joined manners, but I think it was very early on, probably around 2014 or 2015. Yeah, and as I said, our community is very diverse, and yeah, I think that's the introduction of DE-CIX.
Thank you very much for that, Matthias. Matthias has been with DE-CIX for 5 years now, so he's the junior, I guess, of this trio. But even he was saying backstage, he was trying to do some research on compliance with manners and IRR as well, and just the size of DE-CIX and the fluidity of staff movement as well these days. It's hard to track down that history as well, which I think it would be a bit of a challenge. Having people who have been established from the start and having that, I guess, core group there all the time, you can help with that, keeping the knowledge together and understanding the relationships. So that's probably something that might come through in the Q&A as well. Jolly's just mentioned here in New York City, we're very much appreciative for DE-CIX support of our community network, the NYC Mesh as well. Thank you, Jolly. Jolly's he's currently live streaming this to many different CDNs that all these providers would be helping to provide in your countries as well.
Yeah, we're very happy to help.
So over to the Q&A now. As mentioned, please feel free to put some questions in, raise a hand. So first off, we'll start with Peter. We'll mix this up a bit. Why did KIXP join Manners? Were you already implementing routing security best practices? And if so, what?
Well, we were doing some basic routing security, but in a non-formalized way. So when Manners came about, it actually was an opportunity to naturally progress and formalized the way we were doing routing security, and it gave us guidelines as well as parameters within which to work. At the time, it was a bit of a challenge trying to figure out exactly what was this manners thing and why did we need to comply with it? Weren't we doing enough as it was? Because our IR filtering was automated up to a point. But because of being a community organization, there were some things that we were doing at the time which may be frowned upon at this stage in life, including the fact that we were allowing private AS numbers, as well as some other shenanigans of one sort or another. But we eventually got rid of all that as part of the Manners initiative and became compliant, educated our members, and here we are.
Good, very good. Anand, so Kolkata IXP underneath the Indian Internet Foundation, they joined back in 2021. You've been a bit of a proponent of routing security for quite some time. Why did Kolkata IX or the India Internet Foundation finally take that leap to participate and, I guess, become compliant?
Yeah. So in 2020 onwards, even before that only, whenever we have started, the IX was kind of something which was came up from a discussion on bringing root servers, not kind of peering and routing and the DNS resiliency in the region. And after that, whenever the IX has been for 3 to 4 years and different content providers and others have started joining, the idea was to explore on security and resiliency aspects of internet and the critical internet infrastructure per se. And while IX is going ahead, our exploration and research on these areas is also going ahead. So the next step was to work on the routing security part of it, and it is particularly community driven. When Manners was kind of formulated, I was going through what is there in the Manners guidelines. And when I saw the opportunity, the IX is growing and there are peers and the network operators, the network engineers, I am working with them, they understand what need to be done. That was the right time that in 2020, why don't we introduce this in the IX and also with the peers who are there joining that time. And that's why that's how it has started. So kind of you need to make aware the understanding of what need to be done, what could be the problem statements, and then you need to work with those who will implement it. And after that, you need to gauge the problem statements when it will come. And with certain timelines, we have started working on this because it's a community initiative. Everybody is kind of have their own fixed thing, and then they come over here. Somebody are volunteering, some are fixed over here, and they have started working on this. And this was the core motivation towards bringing routing security in Kolkata IX. And when Manners came, it was definitely, as Peter said, it has formalized the way it need to be done. And bringing Manners in Kolkata IX, we thought that other IXPs in India, in the region, will also take the lead, and then they will start working on that. But I've seen that that kind of thing has not propagated. So definitely it needs certain kind of awareness and certain push to propagate things on a routine basis. But again, yes, we have started. The peers have also implementing the filters and actions in that. So maybe others will also join hands. So this is something that has given us motivation to bring routing security in the IX.
Nice. I've just seen a question from Amelia, which goes into nicely the question that I had next. But I'll just quickly get to Matthias. And this is a bit of a different question. It's based on this first question, but since you've been implementing, I was just trying to quickly look up when the first DE-CIX actually started. Was an a manners participant. Like, didn't come up. But have you made it a part of your business that any new IXP needs to be manners compliant? And has there been challenges with bringing those on board as well by having those new IXPs? In some cases, you've actually taken over IXPs businesses and brought them underneath a DE-CIX banner. Has there been any pushback from those communities in trying to implement these new procedures?
So maybe let me start why we actually support manners. That's because we think it's a great initiative, because it provides a crystallization point for a lot of best practices and a standardized set of actions. And that is why we're on board of this. We had to implement a lot of the manners things already before we became a member, simply because of our scale. So you can imagine that, like, for instance, like things like security on the Ethernet level, right? That's also one part that is defined in I think, in Action 3. If you don't take care of that, if you grow beyond a certain size, this will immediately bite you. So it might work well with 10 to 50 members, but if you grow beyond that, someone creating a loop between two Ethernet ports or bridging two Ethernet ports will completely take down your whole platform. So a lot of these issues already had to be solved beforehand. And for us, manners was mainly something that told us that we were doing it right, because we could like tick most of the boxes immediately once we applied for the manners membership, simply because we had to take care of that early on. Getting to the second part of your question, how about new IXPs and what happens if we take over IXPs, is we're rolling out IXPs, new IXPs in Savannah, and of course this is a standardized process. So if we roll out a completely new IXP, then this usually means that we also roll out manners compliance with it, because the whole software stack and the hardware stack is manners compliant from the beginning, including all the configurations, the RPKI filtering, the IRR filtering. All of this is essentially part of a blueprint that is rolled out in new locations. For the case when we're taking over existing IXPs, and I guess you're thinking about SwissIX, for instance, it depends a bit on the case. Sometimes we roll out our technology. That is what is happening or has happened at SwissIX. Sometimes we're in joint ventures, for instance, with some guys, some IXPs in India. So actually our DE-CIX India venture is a joint venture. So they're essentially running a separate stack, and I'm not entirely sure whether we are manners compliant there, but their things don't happen automatically. So there we have to do something. Yeah.
No, that makes sense. I'm going to return to Peter on this as well, just to finish up on Amelia's question. And particularly, Kenya IXP would be seen as a bit of a leader, I guess, within the African community. And what Amelia is getting at there is what are the barriers with new IXPs joining manners, if there are any?
There are no barriers that I can specifically say would prevent a new IXP from joining manners from the onset. The only challenge, and this is based on my experience, is the understanding of potential members on their obligations with regards to manners compliance, as well as meshing that with the IXP operations. But some would consider that to be a non-issue, especially if you're talking about new members coming on board. But generally speaking, manners compliance should not be a challenge.
You should get a job with us, mate. That's what we keep on telling. And we were in discussions today as well with a IXP in the Philippines, and we just said, just apply. We're here to help you get to become compliant as well. And that's the case with a lot of the community, the peering community as well. I'm sure that you can all agree that you have assisted each other and been assisted by one another, and wouldn't be here today without the help of each other. So it's a really lovely community, and that's what we're talking about here today, is this community factor associated with it and how we can spread the word and make it easier for each other as well. Moving on, so we talked about the challenges with routing security best practices, or implementing routing security best practices, and becoming managed compliant. Getting back to the communication part, I'll start with Matthias first. He said that he's got a professional group now that is looking after the communications. How do you communicate to the community the benefits of implementing routing security best practices?
Yeah, I mean, with the size of the community, of course, at some point you have to handle the community relations professionally. So there are actually people that are taking care of that. There are quite a couple of different challenges for getting in touch with our community. First thing is, of course, our member base. So we're having something like regular meetings for each of the IXPs that we are running. So we call that a roundtable. So we ask our customers to join us for an evening. We're talking to them on various topics, maybe technical, maybe business-centric. It depends on the exact meeting. Then we have the DE-CIX Academy, which is run by my appreciated colleague Wolfgang Tremmel, who does very nice BGP tutorials. So if you want to educate someone on BGP security, that's a very nice resource for learning. There are channels like newsletters, mailing lists, so anything that helps us essentially to get in touch with the community. Routing security is, of course, always a part of it, because we simply want to share this thought that you should keep your BGP stream clear. And we also feel, of course, that we have a responsibility for what is happening at our route service. And we also try to educate our members on these issues so they can comply. And manners is actually very nice, not so much because it gives us a guideline how to implement stuff, but because it's a set of standardized actions. And you can simply tell members here, it's not that we're imposing arbitrary rules on you to make your life miserable. These are best practices, and they are agreed upon by the community, and you can simply point them to the documents, right? So that's for us one of the main values of manners.
That's a great point. And yeah, it's a case of moving towards a standardization as well for the practice of manners that has been ongoing in discussions for a while now. Anand, I'm going to roll with this question with yourself and talk about also who have been some of the hardest in your community to communicate this with, and what have been the successes and failures in trying to get that message across.
So I won't talk about specific customers here. Apologies, I can't talk about groups of customers. So as I said, our community is very diverse. You have, as a rule of thumb, if the people you're talking to, the company you're talking to has an own NOC, usually everything is fine. But there are a lot of smaller companies, small to medium business that don't have a NOC and often don't have network engineering expertise. And of course, that is a bit more difficult because occasionally they have to rely on consulting to get their network up to date, and that creates a bit of reluctance to implement changes in routing security.
And Anand, what challenges have you found in the Indian community, in the Kolkata community, and also the ones that you're branching out with? And could you share some successes and failures? No name dropping, but
no, I think I agree with Matthias, because in Calcutta, IX, because it's a regional IX, there are lots of small ISPs as a peer they have joined. So definitely those peers who have proper setup, they have NOCs, they don't find much problem in implementing routing security or other security aspects of it. One thing that actually from communication itself, and we have noticed that the priority is something which is very important over here. It's not that it is very tough to implement routing security in the network as a security posture, but some of the ISPs who are there to earn money, kind of, they have their own business to run setup. They don't have this priority. Anyhow, if we can convince them that this is some of the priorities, and whenever you will, there are security hazards, and whenever you will be into this, there will be loss of business. So, and the second thing is from security aspect, also from different compliance aspect, like MANRAS, if it goes into national compliance bodies from DOT, then automatically they will start prioritizing this. So these are some of the things that we have noticed whenever we have gone to peers, that first of all, the priority is not there. We have gone there and tried to convince that this need to be done. And then we have also gone to some of the compliance organizations who are there in India, and there we have found that yes, these things need to be there as their compliances. Then they will start prioritizing this. Some of the peers, the success stories were kind of because the network engineer was from the I'm not naming that, but the network engineer was from the peer. So we have just, overnight, he has just started it, and within 2 or 3 days, he has completely changed the security posture of the organization, as well as it was there for IX, Kolkata IX also. So there are success stories. It is something that we need to understand how to implement it. And for those who are trying to implement it, give them some sense of understanding that this need to be prioritized. That is something that need to be taken care of.
That's great. I really like what you talk about, the business case, trying to find that business case that works for your community and particular partners that you're working for. Peter, does that resonate with you as well? How you've been trying to sell manners to the peers and for them to sell to their business and enterprises as well?
It's an interesting conversation to have with our members because their transit and their bilateral arrangements with other BGP peers is something that we don't have visibility on. But as part of being Amanda's ambassador, we do talk to them about filtering and making sure that their BGP is working right with everybody else, in addition to the KIXP. We do have that conversation. It is not a challenge, but it is a fun conversation to have.
That's a really nice part. So we had a session last night about the need to treat routing security as part of your supply chain security, and that seems to be very relevant in that case. So is that some sort of messaging around that can work in those cases to help that daisy chain down the line, to show that connectivity providers need to be aware of, and enterprises need to be aware of their connectivity providers complying with these industry best standards?
That is something that will help. That is something that should work. That's something that is expected, in my personal opinion. Everybody should be aware of their obligations and their expectations of everybody else.
And Matthias, has DE-CIX positioned itself, and this I'll ask for everyone, positioned itself as putting forward that it is manners compliant and trying to sell that message as well, and filtering that down to the peers, that they should be proud that they are manners compliant and are doing best current practices, and that should in itself convey to their customers that they're doing what needs to be done to secure their routes.
Yeah, I mean, so we are promoting manners, of course, for instance, on our homepage. To the best of my knowledge, we are not promoting it to new peers, for instance, directly, but a lot of the things that are present in manners as actions, of course, are automatically imposed on people connecting to the platform, simply because like connecting to the route server won't work if you, I don't know, don't have your prefixes RPKI covered or IRR covered, right? So that said, we also have, of course, customers that are resellers of ours, which is like quite increasing our footprint. And for these, the same applies. So if a customer of a reseller wants to connect, they also automatically have to comply to this. Getting beyond that is probably a bit difficult, like customers in the second or third row. And I think you will only reach these customers through community work. And I think that's exactly what Manners is doing, not only like promoting it with standardized documents and actions, but also trying to build a community sense around that. And I think that's also one very important aspect, because it's promoting, making people aware that routing security is a joint responsibility of everyone that is essentially using BGP. And that's also why we are supporting Manners, because we like this community approach.
Anand, is this something that also you're trying to involve into that business case, that those who become Manners participants, they should actually put that forward and use that as a key marketing strategy? Well, it's not key marketing strategy, but a marketing strategy to show to their customers that they have their best interests in mind?
Yeah, sure. Whenever we actually go to the peers and tell them that this need to be done, Manners, if they showcase that their organization is Manners compliant, and for that, these are some of the security challenges that they overcome. And it could be one of the brand building exercise for them also, but definitely getting some incentive for those who are complying with Manners. As a matter of fact, I'm just deviating somewhere. So what happens over here is, if you build things community from ground up, like in Northeastern region, we have seen that there are very less internet exchange points, and we are going over there. So in September, we are having India School of Internet Governance, and what we have done is kind of 2 more workshops on network security and Manners over there. For 2 or 3 days, and we are bringing all the ISPs over there. So what happens from day 0, whenever you start working with them, they understand the vitality and the importance of it, and they can prioritize from their own networks. Whenever they will join the IX, they understand that these things need to be done on that basis. So definitely a sense of importance, brand building, these kind of things will definitely popularize the way it should be there into the Manners. And community building exercise is very important, because ultimately that network engineer who is there working with the ISP is going to kind of implement these things in their network. So, and then the owners of the organizations, the small ISPs, if they will feel that, yes, if I will be Manners compliant, then definitely I will have an edge over other competitors. So these things will definitely go a long way in propagating this into the community.
Fantastic. Yeah, you spot on in terms of foundation. It doesn't always work. It goes back to the old ways of communicating science, that simply pushing information out doesn't mean that it necessarily is absorbed, that there needs to be a dialogue. And that's what it sounds like that you and everyone else here is actually trying to have, is that dialogue to come to an understanding of what are the pain points and finding the priorities as well, and then just slowly educating and bringing them on board, and so they can see that, yeah, this makes business sense. It's what our customers want and need. I have one more question. Those who are attending, do put your questions in here. We've only got another 10 minutes to go, so we're happy to answer any questions as well. This one I'm going to start off with Peter, with 20 years of experience with an IXP. How do you implement routing security to be part of daily business? How do you make it just work in the background, to be fluid, and it doesn't need to be a heavy lift?
automate it. I think is the simplest answer I can give to that. So our routing security is always on, so to speak. It's automated in terms of updates. As soon as we turn up a new member, everything should just work. That is how we do so. In our conversations with the engineers, that is the technical people who will be setting up the sessions on their side, we make it a point to actually specify that is actually going to happen so that their expectations are, how do you say, managed, so to speak. Of course, there may be some impatience by some occasional member in terms of why do I need to consider that when all I need to see is a BGP session. But talking through it now becomes the diplomatic skills that we have to exercise, because in the back end, there's not much to do. The front end is actually talking to the engineers, making sure that they understand what is going on and that their expectations are managed.
Fantastic answer. You're spot on in terms of the technology. It looks after itself. You can train the technology to look after itself. It's the people, isn't it? And that's the point of this session as well. Matthias, this is also something that I'm sure the audience would be really interested at a grand scale. Are you implementing these automations as well to make it business as usual with implementing routing security best practices?
Yes, of course. I mean, as for Peter, of course, also our routing security is completely automated. Essentially, there's also no way for customers around that. You either comply with the routing security at the route server, or you won't be able to push your routes through. That's the way it is. The other thing that is also important from our perspective is giving customers feedback. So they usually want to know why their route is, for instance, not accepted by the route server. So providing feedback via tools like, for instance, a looking glass where we are automatically tagging routes as, for instance, RPKI invalid or whatever other problem the route may have is a very important part of this. Also, of course, we are interested that our member base gets the most value out of the port they buy at DE-CIX. So if there are any problems on their side with routing security, with port setup, of course, we are helping them to get that solved. We have a customer service that is taking care of that. And for let's say, larger problems or problems that are requiring more manpower, there's also a consulting service. So there are people that are really going to the customers and helping them to solve their network, if need be, directly on their router. So that's how we handle this. Other than that, of course, there's also, extensive monitoring of all of this. So we have a SABIX monitoring platform where we are also including monitoring of the route servers, including monitoring of routing incidents, RPKI invalids, port statistics with alarming for network engineers that are on duty 24/7. So our NOC team can immediately go out and fix issues instantly once they pop up in the monitoring.
Fantastic. Wrapping up now, Amelia, I'm sure Peter will back channel you an email address. If not, we'll get that to you. But I just wanted to get everyone's final thoughts on this, particularly for those IXPs that haven't made the leap to connect to Manners. What do you feel is holding them back, and what should they just get over and just get with it and help their communities as well expand their routing security posture? Anand, would you like to kick off?
Yeah, sure, Robbie. So the first thing is prioritize. They don't have that priority for routing security, and definitely awareness and working with them is something very important to make them understand that this is something that for their benefits. And the second thing is, as Matthias is also talking about, is kind of those ISPs which are not having NOCs and they work with the consultants to work with them. So the small ISPs over there, And for big ISPs, definitely they need to bring policy around it to bring manners in their in their network. So these are some of the three things that came up working with them.
Matthias?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is providing help, and Manners is very good with respect to that. It provides sort of a crystallization point for all of these best practices in a standardized document that you can hand over to someone to implement it. Yeah, the other thing is simply education. Like I can only point to Wolfgang, who's doing a great job with the DE-CIX Academy, like educating people on how to set up BGP in a secure way. And often it's a very small things that, or very small hints that already help a lot, right? Like, for instance, how to correctly set your, create your ROAS. That will already help a lot of people, right? And if you can provide all this knowledge in a very compact way and repeatedly communicate it to your member base, that's what will help getting routing security to a different level for most members. And Manners, as I said, is helpful in that because it simply provides guidelines on what you should do as a best practice.
Peter, final thoughts?
As I said earlier, and Matthias has just mentioned it, and Anand as well, is that Manners gives us a framework to work within, and it has been a very good framework. It also allows us to have a conversation with our members or partners or customers, as the case may be, with regards to routing security within the peering points and outside the peering points. And that creates opportunities for occasions like this meeting that we're currently having, training sessions, and very personalized one-on-one conversations that somebody I respect in IX South Africa said is an opportunity to hold somebody's hand and achieve an objective. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you, everyone. I've just put that poll up as well for our attendees to see what their biggest takeaway from this session is, and also to share their thoughts, I guess, on this situation of how a community can actually influence this change that's required, which we've all talked about. It's a long road, and there does seem to be, pardon the pun, peer pressure associated with it as well, which slowly we're building that the number of peers here in terms of those numbers of IXPs that have joined Manners as participants. But yeah, it is starting to take hold, and in the results of the Manners Observatory, it's starting to show the influence that the program is starting to have. So I would like to thank everyone who's joined us tonight, and to our panelists, thank you so much for taking time out to share a little bit about your communities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you all.
Thank you for having me.